preparing for your brand video shoot, and a lot about music. Episode 5, All Maven's Branded Podcast. I'm John Beethan, your host of Branded, the podcast brought to you by the crazies at All Maven, a full-service digital marketing agency located in Southern California. Today we're talking with Chris Ryan, again, and this time about preparing yourself for your brand video shoot. And if you remember, he was on episode 2 talking with Alex about branding, and then again we had him back on episode 3 along with Reese Harris. So now here's the thing. Chris and I, when we get together, we just love music and can't stop talking about it, and the experiences we both had with it. So think Thomas Dolby, Frank Zappa, Joni Mitchell, Weather Report, Jaco Pastorius, Tom Scott and the LA Express, and a whole bunch more artists. So many, in fact. Why don't you just listen to the episode and find out for yourself who?
Well, I'm seeing your video synced up. It just seems like when I finish talking, it takes a second for you to respond.
It's been a long week, Chris.
All right. Well, whatever. I'm ready. It took me a few minutes to get my microphone allowed into the system. So I ended up getting stuck in the green room and then I had to reload the page. So sorry, it took me a minute.
Oh, we're tech guys. We're used to solving problems. In fact, that's kind of like all we do. Too much of that, all we do, huh?
I didn't used to be that way. I used to be the guy that would always be bugging the tech guy. Hello, can you come over to my office?
Yeah, really.
Now, I'm a one-man band, but you know, my day's been so busy that I didn't try logging in until a minute before. So obviously I didn't pay attention to the instructions, which said start, 10 minutes earlier.
Yeah. So how is it being back on radio?
Good. I like it.
So
yeah,
I think
I
we
like
should
it.
start
It's
this
been
off by singing "Love, Love Me Do."
Yeah, I've done that. I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I like it. I mean, it's very natural and it feels good. I've done a lot of voiceover work over the past 30, 40 years too. So it's not like I haven't been behind a microphone for a while, but it is, handy to have that background in radio so that I can do my own voiceovers when I do my own videos. Kind of a one-man band, former agency experience, former radio experience, and it sort of fits me into a unique niche where I've got a lot of different experiences that all help.
Hey, brother, this is the great news about our age, and I'm sure I'm older than you, is seriously, I woke up one day and kind of went, holy mackerel, my experience, unbelievable. I mean, I can talk about experiences I've had that I know nobody else has had, but that would be true for anybody.
Yeah, it's true, but they're unique in your journey. I mean, I believe that to be true, that everybody, and I often use, when I do presentations, I use a slide when I talk about my personal background, and it's just a windy road. It's like one of those switchbacks where it's every time you make a turn, you don't really know what's coming up. Or if you're, driving in the desert and you've got all these kind of roller coaster hills and you don't really see what's out ahead of you. And every time you get over a peak or go around a turn, it all makes more sense. When you look back, it all makes more sense.
So let me ask you a question about this, because I became aware of something the other day. Do you really think when people do a presentation that they want to hear about your background, all of it? In other words, some guy gets up there and he starts talking for 5 minutes about his credentials and he's CEO of this and all.
Nah, not really. It's just,
I don't think so.
Credibility. I mean, when people think, okay, I'm watching a guy speak, why should I pay attention to him? And there's a few things that usually speakers do to try to get people's attention. One is humor. I try to use a little bit of that. But another is credibility or authority. And, if you're going to be talking about a subject, then you probably ought to give them just enough of your background so that they think, oh, he knows what he's talking about. Either that or you show them a few examples and let those, like I'll play my sizzle reel, which is a highlight reel of productions. And so then by the time you get up to the mic or whatever, then they're already thinking, okay, I'm ready to hear what this guy has to say.
Yeah. So when I talk about my credentials, I say things like, so you guys, talk about my history. You probably know who Steve Jobs is, right?
Oh yeah.
And then I say, never really knew him.
Not personally.
Never knew him, but what caught my attention, because I wasn't an Apple guy at the time, is that incredible presentation when he released podcasting.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
every release they would look forward to Steve Jobs because he had a whole presentation. I mean, he was a master of unveiling. He was like a circus performer or a magician. Ta-da!
Yes, he was.
It's the iPhone. It blows everybody's mind.
Yeah. And he was very casual. So as you know, as you figured out from episode 3 on Branded, Chris, is that I just roll with what is and what's happening. So I don't have an agenda for this particular episode, but I did want to ask a question. And we're in the middle of some people call it the virus. Some people call it the corona. Some people call it COVID-19. What do you call it?
The lockdown, usually I'm just
the lockdown. I call it the opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it has been. It has been for some, and it has been for me. That's part of why I was late getting on our session, is because it's just been a blow up kind of a day, but it's a blessing. I've found myself to be very busy, and right now people are using this time to think about what they want to do in marketing, or they would need to communicate, and video is such an effective way to do that. So yeah, I understand rolling with it is the way to go. And I feel very badly for all of the misery that's happening in the world. I'm so fortunate and grateful that it hasn't really touched my life at this point. So I am trying to make lemonade out of this whole thing, but I look forward to it being over.
Sure. I do too. Yeah. So just so everybody knows out there, it's really interesting. We had scheduled this, and then Chris texted me and said, "Oh my God, I just got a paid gig. Does it have to be an hour long?" I go, "No, Chris. And right now we're like 6 minutes and 48 seconds into it. If you want to end it now, we can."
I don't think I've given you enough to make a very entertaining show.
Podcasting has no constraint. What'd you say? Sorry, I interrupted you.
I don't think I've given you enough to make this a very entertaining show. We've just been chatting.
We have to hear you sing "Love, Love Me Do." I mean, that's why we're doing this.
Love, love me do.
Thank you.
I love you. I was listening to Spotify today. I was working, and I pulled up an album from an artist. I had not heard this album. I don't know if you listen to Spotify, but they have a Discover Weekly thing. So they take whatever your listening patterns are, and they serve up a menu of things that they think are in their algorithm, something you'd like. And they ended up serving up something that I hadn't heard in about 20 years. It was a Thomas Dolby album called Flat Earth, which I
have heard it. I've heard it.
Yeah. I mean, I was a big Thomas Dolby fan. I was on the radio playing his music, but the Flat Earth was just like under the radar. And when that came out, one of the songs on it was I Scare Myself. Now that was done originally by Dan Hicks in his Hot Licks. And they were this little kind of acoustic, rocky bluegrass, psychedelic, funky troubadour style band in LA.
I saw them live in Portland once.
So they're fringe. How does a guy like Thomas Dolby from England, who's into Bowie and Eno and all this really cool electronic music, he's the guy that's responsible for ringtones on your cell phone. I don't know if you knew that, but and when the music industry screwed him over, he just went to programming, and that's what he does. He's a programmer. So how did he get hooked into Dan Hicks in his Hot Licks, this little organic, very funky, cool band?
Well, during that time, there's a thing going on there. It's still relevant, called fusion. So rock was fusing with jazz.
Yeah.
And then that's where I pretty much first heard it. I was listening to Weather Report and people like that.
Yeah.
I know. I love that stuff.
I mean, I loved it when Joni Mitchell started playing with Jaco Pastorius and
no kidding,
Tom Scott
and Mingus.
And Mingus, yeah. I mean, those are some of my favorite records. That Hejira, that kind of era. I'm trying to think of a few of the other albums, but yeah, she did the Mingus thing. It was beautiful. So fusion is great, but you don't see, usually the English, they take after the blues artists, or they take on the funk music, the black music, which is fine. You don't hear them going into kind of this stinky troubadour bar, grassroots bluegrass kind of thing. But it was such a cool song. It was a great execution.
Well, good. So, part of the way we roll is, at the show or program notes, I'll be setting up big long links to all this stuff, so people you can either bring it up on your phone and actually click the link and go listen, probably on Spotify. I'm not really sure.
Good.
But
so make lots of.
Do you follow Zappa at all?
Who?
Frank Zappa.
Frank Zappa. Yeah, I met him once.
Did you really? Oh, come on!
I interviewed
do tell.
Him. Yeah. I'm a Zappa fan. I'm also a Todd Rundgren fan. So, and they have intersected and they had parallel careers, even though they never really played or worked together. But Zappa came into the radio station. I was working in Tucson at a very freeform rock station. And whenever he toured, he'd come by and played guest DJ. And we were about the only radio station playing Zappa in the country at that time. And he came in, and I was like first year out of college. And I was told by my program director, Frank Zappa is going to stop by tonight. It's part of his annual thing whenever he tours. So just let him do what he wants. Just give him the mic. So I did that. Literally, I swung the mic stand over to him. So I didn't even have a microphone. And I just basically was there to spin records for him. And he had a double album out at the time called You Are What You Is. And he said at the beginning of his interview, introduced himself, said, first thing we want to do, I want to play you my new record. And so we start with side one, track one. And while that song is playing, my hotline rang. It's this little red phone like you'd see on the president's desk when he wants to bomb Russia. And it was my program director. And if you know anything about Frank Zappa, what played out is the epitome of what he hated about commercial radio, which was a program director calling and telling a DJ, you can't do that on radio. In fact, he had a record called You Can't Do That on Radio. Yeah. And I'm in the credits for that record. I'm in the liner notes because I was one of the DJs that pissed him off. He walked out of the studio and my program director said, don't play the whole record. We don't have that kind of time. Nobody's going to listen to it. Play the hits, which for Frank is very short, Yep. But he ended up getting pissed off. He walked out. He signed a poster and he said, play my goddamn record, Frank Zappa. And he walked out, and I still have that. That's probably my prized possession, that poster.
Is it hanging up in your office?
It's hanging up, but not in my office.
Okay, cool.
Honor. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Kind of a rambling side. We're here to talk about video, but we've hardly touched on that.
Yeah. So Chris and I were talking about, hey, I asked him, I said, what are really maybe the top 3 to 5 things that people that are getting ready to do a branding video or work with Chris or any videographer, what do they really need to consider? What do they really need to sit down and jot notes and really think about before spending any time with somebody like Chris?
Yeah, good question. And there's so many different types of videos out there, and people are using video in so many creative ways that I think a lot of people jump into video because they feel like they have to, they need to, they're losing out, the FOMO effect. And so I would say before you even decide to do a video or call a videographer, figure out exactly what you're trying to accomplish. Especially, and I do a lot of video for businesses and help, with marketing and branding and positioning and strategy. So whenever I get, business owner on the phone or in front of me, I ask them, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? And that's oftentimes they have to think, it's like, well, I want to tell the story of my company. I want to differentiate myself. I want to be able to have people understand why I'm doing what I'm doing and make them want to come and do business with me. And those are, some of my favorite types of videos because it involves really thinking about their place in the competitive marketplace in the world and what their why is, why they're passionate about doing what they're doing. And so I love those videos. So the first step, anybody that wants to do video is wrap your head around what it is that you want to do. Do you just want to entertain people and make them feel good? like what's going on with John Krasinski and that Some Good News, which just has blown up on YouTube, GN. It's the perfect thing for people right now when they're kind of locked up in their homes. So it could be pure entertainment. It could be a transactional or persuasive type of video, or it could be instructional. They call them explainer videos or product demonstrations. So first step is trying to figure out what it is that you want to accomplish, and then who you're talking to. Well, who's your audience? Why would they care? So that helps to kind of compose your message.
Yeah, that's good. So is that enough that's probably enough for people to work with, right?
Yeah. I mean, those two things are the things that I would say you want to do before you call a videographer, is figure out, what you're trying to do and say, and then who are you talking to, so that you have a picture in your head of, how am I going to motivate them to do what I want them to do, whether it's phone or.
Do you ever ask them, have you seen some videos from other companies or YouTube or anything that you kind of really like? Do you ever ask them to do that?
Yeah. So if there were 5 things that I would have somebody do, that is one of them. First, figure out what you're trying to accomplish. Second, understand your audience and what motivates them. Third, I would say is look at some examples of what you think is good. Get an idea of both the quality and the kind of storytelling, because there's talking head videos that can be boring as hell, and they can also be really well done depending on who's the talking head. So get an example or two of what you like. And that really helps the videographer, because then they can almost envision, he's thinking about this kind of production budget.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to, his budget is what? Say it's $3,000, but what he's looking at is a $10,000, production that involves drones and all kinds of field stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, you need to kind of know what you have to work with. So in addition to the first 3 things, what are you accomplishing? Who's your audience? Find some examples of what you like. The next thing would be, who do you want to work with? Like, what kind of videographer do you need? Because you don't want to spend more than you need to. You don't want to hire Martin Scorsese to do a what was the old what was the direct marketing stuff that they used to have on TV, where a Pocket Fisherman, or those things on TV, like QVC, the shopping network. You're not going to hire Martin Scorsese to produce something like that. So
right.
In order to pick your videographer, you want to know what their skill set is and what you're going to need in order to get, your work done. And so some people could just use a shooter, somebody that knows how to shoot and edit. Those people typically take direction from other people. They typically work with a script that's been developed by somebody else, but they could be a great cinematographer, and they could probably edit a very good, tight video based on what was given to them. But not every videographer comes with the skill set where they can actually help you compose the script, strategize about the message, coach you into a good performance, make you feel comfortable in front of the camera, and ultimately, bring out the empathy and the emotional connection. So that's a little different skill set. And with just like anything else, you get what you pay for, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to get a really good production and have somebody that knows how to kind of bring that out, that story, you want to get somebody that's got some experience in those areas.
Yeah. So it's really interesting, because in podcasting, it's kind of like an Indian blanket. It's the same but different. Like one side of the blanket has one pattern, on the other side the pattern's reversed. So it's very similar. What's different is that largely what you're doing are kind of like one-offs, right? Although I'm quite sure you're probably getting other work from the same client once they've seen your work, because it's so good. But with podcasting, we think about it in terms of the long term. It's just like, what is the long story that you're telling? And one thing I coach people say is, it's the same kind of a thing, which is, what message, what's your brand, and what are you trying to get out there? And then also, who do you want to be speaking with? So example I use is if you're really trying to reach CEOs, you simply have to ask the question, what do they do when they're not working? Where do they hang out?
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, the answer is the golf course, right? So you might want to find somebody in your company that golfs and is personable and humorous and whatever that could actually carry the show.
Right.
You know, but it's long. It's long. You know, it's a long. You know, if you're gonna do a weekly show, you know, you're gonna start jotting down some ideas. You know, you're not really scripting at all. I mean, for each episode, it's usually bullet points. But for the overall design of the show, you know, you know, you're looking to make a long-term impact. I mean, it is your media channel after all, and your treasure trove of everything that you do. But there's an intersection. I mean, part of the reason I love spending time and hanging out with you is we intersect on so many different levels.
I had no idea you knew Dan Hicks and his Hot Licks.
Oh gosh,
you always open up new areas of mutual.
You remember Canned Heat? Remember Canned Heat?
Canned Heat, sure.
Okay, so when I was living in New Mexico, my wife at the time and daughter, not my daughter, her daughter, but we went for a horsey backy ride because Aja wanted to go ride horses. And we went out in the desert, this place outside of Santa Fe. And, you know, we go on a ride, you know, you drive to this place and there's like a couple horses out there. So, so I'm sitting there, you know, and everybody, it's myself, my wife, Aja, and then this other couple. And I'm sitting there going, that guy looks really, really familiar. And I couldn't figure it out. So his name is Larry, the Mole, the bass player for Canned Heat. So
wasn't he kind of a big guy?
Yeah, he was or is. I didn't stay in contact with him, but
I remember those guys. Yeah, they played.
I mean,
I think.
What's that?
I think they played at Woodstock. I mean, they were big.
Yeah, they did play at Woodstock for sure.
Back in the day.
So why don't you just rip off all the people in the radio station, guest artists and stuff that you had the pleasure of spending time with. Besides Frank Zappa.
You know, it's so hard. I used to slap I used to have these giant speakers, you know, back when we used to have phonograph records and amps and tape decks. I used to have these giant speaker cabinets and they had 15-inch woofers in them. And on the outside of the speaker cabinets, I slapped all the backstage passes I could, that, you know, all the different people that I'd seen or hung out with. But you know, Santana, Jackson Brown, Todd Rundgren. You know, I spent a week with him once. We had a summer camp and we actually went into Vermont, and me and about 200 other fans had a week of we took over this whole Von Trapp family lodge there. That's where the actual Sound of Music Von Trapp family ended up, was in Vermont, just outside of Stowe. And it's near Ben and Jerry's. So we spent a week there practicing the Sound of Music, and we had a cast. And I was one of the nuns, and I was part of the singing chorus. And it was just one of the highlights of my life to spend a week working with Todd Rundgren, who's one of the best, you know, producers and musicians and songwriters, and yet still kind of an unsung hero when it comes to mass appeal or Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Hopefully that'll change one day.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. I think that there's been a couple documentaries, or one in particular with him.
Yeah, fascinating guy, and I mean, he's touched so many things that people would not really know. He was very early in development of software for Apple. You know, he was one of the first adopters of some of the early Macintosh products. But gosh, you know, some other artists that I've met, you know, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, you know, a lot of these big touring bands of the 80s. That's when I was in radio. So that's when I was doing a lot of that stuff. Interviewed Rick Danko of the band. He and Arthur Lee, who was the guitarist and singer for Love, and they did a tour, and I interviewed them. Rick Danko is no longer with us. Mm-hmm. Little Feat, it's another great band I love.
Sure.
I met those guys and interviewed them several times. So yeah, good times.
Yeah, I know. So it was a lot of bands that were like coming through Tucson. Were they playing in Tucson too?
Tucson, and then I also on the air here in San Diego. So, yeah. So it was just bands that were touring, or it could be a phone interview. Like Pat Metheny, when he would come out with a record, he would always call our station. I would do a phone interview with him, and whenever he came through town, my jazz show. I had a jazz show at the time. We would always produce his concerts. He's a super nice guy, great guitarist.
Did you ever follow Bela Fleck?
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah. I mean, have you heard his recent stuff with his wife?
I don't think I have.
Yeah, so do check it out. I'm trying to like, I'm probably going to get this a little bit wrong, but she's like really into very, very traditional, like folk music.
Mm-hmm.
So they've kind of merged and done a couple different things lately. But wow, when I'll talk about an influence on me, because I used to play banjo, and then I discovered Tony Trischka, Bela Fleck.
Yeah.
Of course, Earl Scruggs and those people. Those were the people I was like studying and listening and playing along with and all that. But Bela Fleck, when I saw his band, and then Howard Levy. Do you know Howard Levy?
I don't.
Harmonica player.
Mm-mm.
Chicago-based blues harmonica player, played early on with Bela Fleck. And oh my God, you want to talk about an accomplished musician. He could play any note on the harmonica. And if you know harmonica playing, you're kind of stuck into a scale pretty much.
Right.
But this guy was very accomplished, masterful. Yeah. Check out his early stuff. I think you'd really, really enjoy it.
And the Flecktones, Bela Fleck.
And the Flecktones, yeah.
You know what? There is one other thing when it comes to video, going back to that, but one other thing that people should think about if they're thinking about jumping into video, and it's probably the most obvious, but if you had to think of 5 things before you start doing a video, one of them is, how am I going to distribute this? Because the distribution is going to play a role in some of your creative decisions. Like, are you trying to create something that would just be on social media and watched on mobile devices? Well, that'll change probably the size and maybe the editing and maybe the graphics. You might want it to be a lot shorter and, grab people's attention. So, stop the scroll. That's the idea with a good social mobile device video. You want to stop the scroll. But with when
you say stop the scroll, what do you mean exactly?
Well, as you're scrolling on your phone and you're looking at
I see what you're saying.
Like, Instagram, Facebook, you're slowly scrolling LinkedIn, and little things are going to come across. You have like a half second before your finger goes scroll. And what you want to do is have them stop and at least let that video play for a second or two, and then click to, activate the sound ideally. And then, you've got yourself a captive audience. But yeah, so social media, you have to grab them very fast. Whereas if you're telling a story, if you're doing something that's a little more long form or more documentary style, if you have the audience for that long, then a really good story can be told. But you can't blur those two. You couldn't try to, do a long form video and expect it to really penetrate social media unless it was, just crazy creative and viral. So web, YouTube, social media, there's all different ways to distribute the video. And that should be a discussion that you have with your videographer before you get into shooting or scripting anything.
So I know some people use Vimeo. Some people post on YouTube, and I know Vimeo, if you do much at all, you have to pay for it and stuff. So what's your take on those two platforms?
Well, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on Vimeo. I know that some people prefer it for quality or perhaps for other reasons. I am just going to go with YouTube because they are so much a part of the whole Google search algorithm. And it's the number 2 search engine in the world behind Google. So I would rather have my stuff be optimized for search. And so I have no problem with having YouTube be my host of choice.
Yeah. Being sensitive to the time, because I know you got something coming up. Here's a question I'm sure people are, or I'll just say I want to know.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, given that we're in the middle of a pandemic and people are staying home and all the rest of it, I'm sure Chris isn't available to go out and do a video shoot. Is that true? Or
I'm actually leaving to go do one right now. It's with an essential business, and
do you have your video mask?
Yes, I have a N95. Thank you very much, and I have gloves. I have a 6-foot boom so that I don't even have to put a lavalier mic on them. All they have to do is walk under the mic, walk under the boom, and I can capture the audio. So yeah, I'm definitely busy doing video right now. And yeah, we take all the precautions, social distancing, cleanliness.
Sin, does she go with you?
She does if I need a second camera or if I need a grip, somebody to hold a reflector or, adjust lighting. Oftentimes I will have a second camera angle, especially if I'm doing interview style videos. It's always nice to have a fresh angle, and it helps with the editing because your second angle can be what you jump to when you cut, a mistake. It's a great cheat when you're editing to go to the alternate angle. So yeah, she's learning more about shooting. We've got a nice setup with 2 cameras plus a GoPro and a drone. So we can do just about anything that people need, and it's pretty amazing what you can do nowadays with a fairly modest budget, $5,000, and you've got yourself pretty much all the equipment that you would need to be a very good videographer and editor.
Yeah.
All you need experience.
Well, yeah.
And you have to learn how to use all that stuff.
Well, I'm sort of thinking all your work in radio and everything else you did before is actually awesome experience for what you're doing now.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I know about editing and production. I know about sound design, and I know about storytelling. And so, yeah, I feel like I'm just super lucky that my life went in the different directions that it went in to lead me to where I'm at now. I love what I'm doing, and nothing makes me happier than combining what I'm doing, which is videography, with shooting bands. I've done a couple of videos, music videos, that one of them's got, 25,000 hits isn't crazy. You're talking about some of these people that have.
Which videos should I search for? Which video is 20?
Well, there's a band in San Diego that's a cover band for Steely Dan. I'm a big Steely Dan fan, and they are called the Steely Damned. And they're actually called the Steely Damned 2 because they changed their singer, and they've been around for a long time, but they did a version of My Old School that is just spot on. And the guitarist, Hank Easton, is probably one of the best guitarists in San Diego, if not Southern California. So yeah, there's a video there that's got a ton of hits. My Old School plus Reelin' in the Years. There's a few of them that I've uploaded there.
Well, that's fun. I am looking forward to doing a music video with you. Okay.
Cool. I love it.
No, I'm serious. I just was off the phone today with somebody that she and I are going to have a long conversation, but we have a big background together with common people like Herbie Hancock and Gab Calloway and a few other people. And she's a promoter up in Los Angeles, I think.
Oh, great.
So she, like you and I, just couldn't stop talking about the music thing. It was on Mary Kravitz's thing. We go into the break room and there's 3 of us and the rules are you only get 1 minute, but heck, she and I took like 10. So
fun. That's always fun when you uncover new relationships and friendships and connections like that.
Yeah. In fact, I will openly say on this podcast, go to watchusthrive.com. Take a look at it. Sign up if you're called to do so, because in terms of Mary's awesome for sure. And the way she handles this weekly Zoom call with the breakout rooms is that every week I get to know 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people, and we're making connections, and it's good for each other's business. And the quality of people there is just like super high. That's how I met Karen Brzezinski, and Karen and I and my partner Stephanie in Santa Fe are putting together another channel. I'm quite sure we're still early stages, but it's just been so great.
Well, the fun thing about what we both do is that our job is to be in service to others, helping them tell their story in an interesting way. We both do that same thing. And we uncover a ton of stories that way, just by being inquisitive and curious. It's just it's fun, you know?
Yes. So I will ask you the question I usually ask everybody. I probably haven't had the chance to ask you, which is, Chris, name one defining moment in your life where just everything changed.
Oh, wow. There have been, just like I told you about that curvy road, there's been a lot of those. But I would say it was when I made the decision. I was 20 years old, and I made the decision to just go ahead and pack up my Volkswagen Beetle and leave San Diego with nothing but camping gear and demo tapes. And I had a route. I was going to drive from Tucson north all the way up through, Utah, Colorado, Four Corners, New Mexico. I was going to hit them all and just drop my tapes off everywhere and see who would hire me. This was I was a college DJ, so I didn't really have any commercial radio experience. But the first day I went into a station in Tucson, and that changed my life. So that's a big defining moment, because it was the decision to pack up and leave, but it was also the decision to take that job in Tucson, because I can't imagine how my career would have gone if I had not been able to have a experience in freeform FM radio back then, which was just fun. I never would have met my wife, because I met her through a radio event, a station event. So, all the things that came out of that, all the wonderful musical, just blew my mind. And I had a chance to program a jazz show, a leading jazz. I actually was up against Wolfman Jack in the ratings, and I had better ratings than him, which was kind of fun.
Did you know Rhythm and Roots concert series and Susan Holden? Jonathan Holden.
I know the names, and I knew their shows. In fact, I probably went to a few of the shows that they produced back in Tucson. They did a lot of stuff for a community radio station, KCXI. So I was familiar with them, but I did not probably listen to the show religiously, because I was so locked into my radio career at that time.
I was doing marketing for Jonathan when I was when I was in Santa Fe, and the genre is roots music. So, just that kind of music. So one day he calls me and he goes, I know you're kind of new to this whole roots scene. So I've got 2 tickets sitting at the Lensic Theater in Santa Fe to see Greg Brown. And I said, I have no idea who you're talking about, but thank you very much. So I went. And 3 minutes into this, seeing Greg Brown, who Jonathan said he considered one of the top 3 American roots music performers, 3 minutes into it, I had this visceral sensation of sanity. Just felt calm in my body and just sane. And that was my introduction to roots music and Greg Brown. So, so going forward, I always call roots music sanity music.
Well,
it just made me sane.
What you said makes complete sense to me, because I've always been I think those of us who really tune into music and I think music is kind of like been the thread of, in my life, it's the most important thing. If there weren't music, I don't know what I would have done. It got me through so many lonely times, hard times. It brings me back to good times. It's a timeless thread through my life. And I listened, like today, when I stumbled on that Thomas Dolby song, it took me back 20 years. And then it took me back more, because he was doing a cover of something from the early 70s. And it was like, God, that was just so good. And it really does make you feel normal when you can lock into music like that. I think it's got a healing ability. It ties you into kind of this universal energy that I just love it. That's why in the videos that I do, music is a really important part of pulling the emotion. Whatever emotion you're trying to create, music is a big part of the production.
Yeah, absolutely. So Yeah. So for those out there that I'm just going to wind this thing down a little bit, that keep putting off starting your podcast, here's a lesson for you. We actually can see each other, Chris and I. So Chris is about 1 or 2 inches away from his microphone, and I am 1 or 2 inches away from mine. So Chris, what I'm going to ask you to do for demonstration purposes is pull back about a foot. Pull back about a foot. So so for everybody out there, you can see this is not what you really want, is it?
No, I think it doesn't sound quite professional. I'm going to come back even further. So yeah,
I know.
Yeah, you want to get the microphone, and then you just you don't want to get so close that you're eating the mic. That's too much.
Yeah, exactly.
But there were DJs that sounded like that.
Yeah, you sound really good, Chris. So anyway, it's just a pleasure to be, with you always, especially with somebody that knows how to use a microphone. Oh my gosh. People keep saying, I want to upgrade my microphone. I listen, I go, you just need to learn how to use it. Like that Samsung Q2U. How are you liking it?
I like it. It's a good mic. I'm surprised at the price. I mean, it's got great sound. I'm just about to go out on a video shoot now with a Aperture Deity microphone that cost me $450, but this for $50-$60 sounds great. Does the job.
It's actually it's a step up from the ATR 2100, mainly because it has a better low end. You can actually hold the microphone and move your hand on the mic, and the mic doesn't pick it up. With the ATR 21 does, and then the microphone stand is taller.
Yeah.
Because the ATR 21 comes with a microphone stand too, but it's really kind of short and you have to lean over it.
Yeah.
That's your podcast tip for today.
Hey, man, that's what it's all about. Got to learn new tricks all the time.
I know. Say, Chris, would you like to leave everybody a tip of the day?
Tip of the day is go to www.ryanvideoproductions.com and check out some of the work. And if you're interested in talking about a project, hit me up. That's the best I've got. That's my tip of the day. It's Friday afternoon and it's a beautiful day here in Southern California. And I just put my mask on and go out and do my job.
Yep. Awesome. So Chris and I look forward to being on this episode, or I should say this show in the future. So for those of you that are really into podcasts, we can always be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere you catch your podcasts. And you can simply do a Google search for All Mavens branded podcast to find us as well. So Chris, I'm glad you got some work.
Yeah, me too. Hey, yesterday, just to tell you just how interesting this job is, yesterday I was shooting video at a facility that was a clean room, a biopharmaceutical lab, and they're doing tests for treatment of COVID-19. So they've got an FDA clinical study going on. They're getting ready to do trials. And I was, I had my little bunny suit on and my camera and was watching, some pretty amazing work being done. So it's just weird. Now I'm about to go to a preschool and interview some teachers. It's just every day is interesting and different. That's what I love about it.
Yeah. You are blessed, my friend.
Yeah, I am. I feel very, very grateful. It's life is what you make it though. You really got to kick the door open and just say, hey, I want to do this. I never would have thought I'd be doing this when I started in radio. Even if you told me 5 years ago I'd be doing this, I probably would have said, nah, I'm in the corporate world. I was a corporate marketing director. I thought that's my career, but life changes, turns in the road. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chris. Talk to you soon.
I appreciate the invitation.
You're welcome. You'll be getting another one very soon.
Awesome. See you later.
Bye.